Welcome to the weather forecast on CIA TV channel. Dear friends, another major storm system is set to impact the United States over the next few days, with more significant severe weather ahead, including numerous to widespread damaging winds, very large hail, and tornadoes. So in today's forecast, we are going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days. We had a bunch of tornadoes happen out of a singular supercell back over New Mexico, and that even went to Lach, where we had multiple tornadoes in a 1-mile wedge outside of Morton, Texas. We still have a line of storms out there this morning pushing across parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. That line of storms will actually move into the Ohio Valley later today with additional severe weather. And then more severe weather will ramp up right again back over in the high plains today. Hail and tornadoes all being a possibility. This was a huge tornado that happened outside of Morton, Texas. We don't exactly know what the magnitude of this tornado was or how large it was, but it was likely around a mile wide. We have 2 enhanced risks of severe weather in place, one of which is in Colorado and Kansas, and another one in New Mexico and Texas. Large slight risk of severe weather also extends from the high plains back into the Ohio Valley. And then the marginal threat of severe weather goes all the way back up into the northeast. All hazards of severe weather are going to be on the table today. Damaging winds is one of the concerns, where scattered damaging winds will be possible across the board in the Ohio Valley and the southern plains. Large to very large hail is also a big concern, mainly back over in the high plains, where we could see hailstones as large as the size of softballs today, which, for the record, we saw softball-sized hail yesterday out of those storms that happened back over in the Texas Panhandle. And that may happen again, even a slightly further back off to the west. And then our tornado threat for today, for now, is a large 5% tornado risk, which encompasses southeastern Colorado, western Texas, and also back into southwestern Kansas and the Oklahoma Panhandle. We might even see one back up into parts of Colorado and even southwest Kansas, depending on confidence with our storm mode for today. So definitely make sure that you're staying weather aware. Additionally, there is an isolated chance for a tornado or two as far east as Kentucky and Tennessee. The threat of severe weather will continue to shift further to the east, where we have a massive slight risk of severe weather in place from the Ozarks and even the southern plains like Texas and Oklahoma all the way back to the east coast, and a marginal threat that goes from New Jersey and Maryland all the way back over into New Mexico. But confidence is a little bit lower for exactly where the most significant threat of severe weather will reside. But I do think damaging winds will be the main concern across the board. This should be relatively scattered, with damaging winds between 60 to 70 miles per hour. Large hail is also a concern. I think the greatest threat of this will be right around Dallas, Fort Worth, and also in southern Oklahoma. And then on Sunday, the threat of severe weather is going absolutely nowhere. We have another level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk of severe weather in place across parts of Texas and Oklahoma. 2 slight risks of severe weather, one in the central and southern plains and another one along the east coast. And then a marginal threat that encompasses basically almost all the Ohio Valley and back into the plains, where all hazards of severe weather will be on the table, but scattered to numerous damaging winds and very large hail are expected to be the main concerns in both regions. That will likely still be across large areas. Now, over the next 24 to 48 hours, we are expecting once again an elevated tornado threat across the central and southern plains. And where our storms initiate will be back over here in parts of Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, and also the Oklahoma panhandles, where we will have a lot of wind shear and a lot of instability, which should lead to a primed environment for tornadoes. And then, as we go into Saturday, our environment is still going to be somewhat favorable, especially back over here in parts of North Texas, where we may get a supercell or two near a boundary that could lead to a tornado or two, back over in parts of central and North Texas in extreme southern Oklahoma. And a slightly more elevated tornado threat may exist as well near the Mississippi River Valley. But by no means am I expecting much more than just a couple, maybe a few tornadoes in either region for Saturday. This will be weakening as it moves across parts of Arkansas and as well as Missouri. And again, any supercells will be able to produce the potential for very large hail and maybe even a tornado or two. But our wind and hail threat will actually be increasing during the overnight hours, where a line of thunderstorms appears likely as we go into Saturday morning. And then that would eventually move into parts of the Ohio Valley and the Dixie Alley. We are anticipating supercells to begin firing up around Lubbock, Texas, mainly with damaging winds, a little bit of hail, and maybe an isolated tornado. And then into the overnight hours, the storms weaken as they approach Dallas-Fort Worth, and then maybe a few more storms as we go into Saturday morning. And then eventually by Saturday afternoon, more supercells are going to fire off here across parts of Texas, where all hazards of severe weather will be on the table. But I do think large hail is going to be the main concern, maybe an isolated tornado if a storm's able to ride along an outflow boundary. It'll be a relatively short-lived threat, probably only a few hours long. Maybe an isolated tornado or two here with this line as it moves across parts of western Kentucky and also southern Indiana. And then there may be a supercell or two here across parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, or even southeast Missouri that even produce an isolated tornado during the mid to late afternoon hours, and then eventually into the early evening hours. There will still be some storms out there in central Tennessee, but I think generally speaking, the biggest concern will just be damaging winds by that point. And then on Saturday, more storms are expected during the morning and early afternoon here, across parts of the Ohio Valley and the Dixie Alley, but primarily across the Dixie Alley, where damaging winds will be the biggest concern, and an isolated tornado or two will be a possibility, as those storms roll across parts of Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi during the afternoon. And then going into the evening hours, really not a whole lot of a severe weather threat is expected, but maybe an isolated severe storm during the late afternoon and early evening in the lower Midwest and also in the lower Ohio Valley. And then on Sunday, we could be talking about some really big hailstorms here across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And we are likely going to see even more supercells on Monday, basically in the southern plains again. And so, as we've talked about a lot here throughout this video and other videos, it is going to be a very active stretch of severe weather over the next 7 to 10 days. And then, beyond Sunday, the severe weather threat will continue across the United States. On Monday, we are expecting scattered severe weather to be a possibility from the southern plains back into the southeast. On Tuesday, severe weather still possible here across the southern plains and the Gulf Coast. And then on Wednesday, we should have a high-pressure system that should push a lot of our moisture back down further to the south, which should prevent at least some more of that significant severe weather from happening. And I do think there will be at least a quiet day or two at some point next week where we're not going to see significant severe weather, probably around Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then by next weekend, things start to become a lot more uncertain, but we may see a trough eject over the Rocky Mountains, which could lead to a more organized threat of severe weather, especially in the central and northern plains and maybe back into the Midwest. We will continuously update the storm situation in the next news. Please subscribe to the channel to follow. Thank you for watching the news on CIA TV channel.